Hello, everyone, and welcome to the SearcherCast by Greenville Ghost Tours. My name is Dustin Bays, and I'm the director of Truth Searchers Paranormal Investigators, and I will be your host alongside Gabe Mathews, certified paranormal investigator and founder of Truth Searchers Paranormal Investigators. Join Gabe, myself, and our guests as we share paranormal experiences, media, and current events. What evidence will the Truth Searchers find this time?
Hey everyone, welcome to the SearcherCast. It's myself, Gabe Mathews, alongside Dustin Bays.
Hey, hello. Yeah, I forgot. I keep forgetting that I'm supposed to say my own name.
Right,
yeah.
We're members of the True Searchers, Paranormal Investigators, as well as Greenville Ghost Tours. And shout out to Dustin, who has a wicked awesome Greenville, right?
Yeah. If you like food and nature stuff, check it out.
Awesome. Hey, I just wanted to ask you, did you listen to the Terrence Howard episode of Joe Rogan podcast recently?
No, I do not participate in that particular podcast, but tell me all about it.
Yeah, so it was incredible. And what I was particularly interested in is he was talking about rearranging the periodic table. So,
Interesting.
Yeah, exactly. So, you think about the periodic table as like a box, right? But he's kind of saying that it could be like spirals, and that there's a lot of linkages between all the different elements, whether it be, sound, light, color, tone, matter, and shape, and that there's like a lot of interconnectivity between all the elements. And they actually rearrange it based on natural curvature of the elements. And, what they realize is that hydrogen actually has the same tone as carbon, and you can actually turn the color into sound, and you can just divide by 2 and keep dividing by 2 to get all the wavelengths. But a lot of this research, I don't quite understand it, but I think it's very
going over my head.
Yeah, it's very interesting, and I think that this could actually change everyone's perception of chemistry, science, and relativity. So basically we're after the truth and finding this out. So I've been actually looking into Terrence Howard, the actor who's in Empire, and all of his research into this field. I just found it fascinating and wanted to know if you had any interest in this or what your thoughts were.
Yeah. Well, okay, to clarify, this is Terrence Howard, like the actor you're talking about.
Yeah, from Iron Man 1. He was actually fired from Iron Man.
Right, because they it was like conflict offset, right?
Well, I don't know.
What I heard.
In the podcast, he said that it was another reason, but then they hired Don Cheadle out from under him, and that, Robert Downey Jr. wouldn't back him because he got Robert Downey Jr. the job in Iron Man.
Oh, man. That's talking about a backstab. But so this all, when you were talking about like the colors and it made me think of like the Rainbow Bridge from Thor. And so then this is kind of all coming together, and it's like, I don't know. It made me think of that.
Yeah, which makes me think like everything might be connected, and just figuring out that the elements may play a role in this: the color, the shape, the sound, the tones of all these elements, and just the natural curvature of them all. And with that, being everything connected, I think might want to introduce our guest today.
Yeah, absolutely. Our guest today, we're talking about interconnectivity, and our guest today is going to talk a little bit about the Georgia Guidestones. Today we have our friend Wesley. He's a paranormal hobbyist. Welcome to the podcast, Wesley.
Hey guys, thanks for having me on the podcast today.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, and he came on my tour one evening, him and his significant other, and she was on the podcast a couple of weeks ago. And she was been to all these different haunted attractions and ghost tours in general. Wesley, do you share this? Do you go around with her to all these different places?
So whenever we take a road trip or a vacation, we typically find a ghost tour or a haunted attraction to go to. She is more into it than I am, and I'm just kind of along for the ride.
Sure. Okay. Well, cool. Well, what ghost tour is your favorite, and why is it Greenville Ghost Tours?
Well, it's going to have to be Greenville Ghost Tours because it was mainly the most recent one that we had went on. We did go on one in Pigeon Forge. It wasn't as good. It was good, but it wasn't as good.
That's what we like to hear at Greenville Ghost Tours, that other tours are not just as good as ours. That being said, there is some great tours out there, and I definitely highly recommend when you travel around to check out your local haunted attractions and or ghost tours in the area to learn about the city, walk around the city, and just have fun, because that's what it's about, is fun. But the one thing that I had talked to you after the tour about, that I was so excited to talk about, is the Georgia Guidestones. And I have always wanted to go visit the Georgia Guidestones, but unfortunately, I guess I can't do that anymore. But you, I believe, said you grew up near them.
Yes, that is correct. So I grew up in the town of Elberton, Georgia, which is just right down the road from the Georgia Guidestones. And I spent many summers going to the Guidestones, and multiple times I was at the library just reading about them.
That's awesome. Well, I actually made a list of questions about the Georgia Guidestones, and we can go down the list, and or we could just have a natural conversation. But my first question is, what are the Georgia Guidestones?
So the Georgia Guidestones are mainly known as the granite monoliths of that county. And they're really a testament to, one, architecture, and two, how to restructure the world after a major event such as, world-ending catastrophe.
Interesting. And my second question, who made the Georgia Guidestones?
So no one actually knows who really made the Georgia Guidestones. They were built by a gentleman that used the alias R.C. Christian. And R.C. Christian was not his real name, but it's believed that he was a gentleman from the upper side of the U.S., New York, maybe Boston, something like that. But it's also believed that he had ties to the Rosicrucians, which were a branch off of the Knights Templar.
And then my third question, who destroyed the Georgia Guidestones?
So we don't really know who destroyed the Georgia Guidestones. There are a lot of theories out there that it was some anti-religious radical. There are some theories that it was a politician or somebody that was associated with a politician, but there's no confirming evidence of who actually did it.
This kind of goes back to the same one, but why were the Georgia Guidestones destroyed?
Again, there's no solid answer as to why they were destroyed, but the popular statement is they were destroyed because people believe they were a sign of Satanism.
Can you tell us a little bit more about that? Like why, like it was saying it's supposed to be like a guide after an apocalypse to like a better world. So how did the people draw a connection to Satanism? Is it just due to the fact of the mystery behind it?
So if you've never seen the Georgia Guidestones, there are multiple pillars creating a structure, and they're written in multiple different languages, from English to Arabic to Japanese and Chinese. And the first rule in this world structure is keep your population under 155,000. So people associated that with population control, and then tried to tie that into, well, this is obviously Satanism because you want to have a lower population because then it's easier to tell people what to do.
What messages are in the Georgia Guidestones?
So some of the messages that were in the Georgia Guidestones were creating a smaller population. It was also in regards to how to maintain a governance style structure. So it would walk you through how to create a hierarchy of who you need to talk to or how to resolve conflicts and resolve problems.
So almost like it's very kind of like giving me like a Hammurabi's code / like almost 10 Commandments feel.
Yes.
Next question. Where were the Georgia Guidestones located?
So this is going to be difficult for me because I have no sense of direction, but they were just located outside of Elberton, Georgia. And I believe they were located in what's known as Dewey Rose. I might not be completely correct on that.
Next question. What is there some religion associated with the Georgia Guidestones?
So this is a double-edged sword. Yes and no. So the religion that's associated with it is the Rosicrucians, which, as I mentioned earlier, is a branch of the Knights Templar, but it's also a subset of Christianity. And it's not something that's very well known by the public. So it's one of those things that If you know, you know.
All right, and this is actually my last question I have on my list. So, do you think there is a paranormal linkage with the Georgia Guidestones?
Absolutely. I think that there is a paranormal linkage because as you dig more into the Georgia Guidestones, you find out that where they were specifically built wasn't just picked randomly. It was very calculated. It was built on top of one of the largest hillsides in Elbert County, which, according to some research, states that if the polar ice caps were to melt and the world was flooded, that would be one of 7 locations that actually had land.
Just that hill or the area in entirety?
Just that hill. So everything else would be water, but that hill would still be exposed.
So because it was built on a hill, it would, if the world was flooded, this would be above, you could still live there.
Yes, it would be above the sea level.
That makes me want to map out everywhere in the world that would be above this place. So I don't know, now I'm starting to think Noah's Ark or something. If this was to happen again and there was a massive flood and or I guess climate change, this would be above the flood zone. Is that what we're thinking?
Yeah, that's pretty much spot on. There's even more that goes along with it as well. If you got to view the Guidestones, there was a center pillar that had some very specific cutouts that would align with the North Star and the winter solstice. And there was even one that would line up with the summer solstice as well.
Wow, this is interesting. Yeah, and I'm just kind of taking notes here. And I'm very interested. So there's the winter solstice, North Star, summer solstice, center pillar, architecture, granite monoliths, Satanism, Christianity, Japanese, Chinese, Knights Templar. And it seems like it's all kind of especially architecture, you think of you build a building with a point and it can kind of attract or summon or channel or have some energy associated with this site. And I know a lot of people kind of consider this to be a Georgia, a Stonehenge of, Georgia.
Yeah, it earned the nickname of Georgia Stonehenge at one point.
Well, and Stonehenge kind of has its own, thing, but it's seems like everything's kind of linked together, possibly, or yeah, it's drawn in. And again, going back to the population control, I guess I'm trying to think: is this nefarious, or is it benevolent, or just kind of unknown? It's interesting, and the fact that they were destroyed, how what's going to happen next to this? All this kind of thoughts are going through my head.
A lot of people want to have the Guidestones rebuilt, but it's been made public by the county that they have no desire to rebuild the Guidestones, and they've even given the land back to the original owner.
What do you mean they gave the land back?
So originally, the land that the Guidestones were owned they were purchased from, I believe it was a farmer, and that land was used to basically display the Guidestones whenever they were blown up and then later torn down because the structural integrity was compromised. The county decided that they were just going to give the land back to the original owner or the descendants of that owner.
Gotcha. So the Guidestones became they were put up by the county, or they just popped up into this location randomly, and then the county took it on or something.
So they were originally put up by R.C. Christian and the team that he hired.
I guess my question is was this like a Banksy style? He got permission from this farmer to put it up, or he vigilante put it up, or did he get permission? Was this something he did in This was obviously, because it's not his real name, this was all done in secret.
The construction of everything was done in secret, and I believe he actually got permission from the landowner, basically buying that portion of land to put the stones on and then selling it to the county.
Okay, so there is some sort of exchange. There is some sort of paperwork here with the person's probably actual name on here, if we wanted to potentially dive deeper. But Yeah, sorry, Gabe, you were going to say something.
Yeah, I was just curious. So, Wesley, are you pro rebuilding the Georgia Guidestones, or are you anti rebuilding the Georgia Guidestones?
I think they should be rebuilt. Like being the weird kid that was fascinated by them growing up in that county, I never understood why people didn't like them or thought that they were a problem. So I'm pro rebuilding it. I think that one, it's a history piece that we need to put back up.
Yeah, and I'm going to take your side because I always wanted to go visit these, and I never got a chance to. And now that they're destroyed, I can't really go visit them, and I'm disappointed. And I'm interested in all of this. It's just why, basically we're excited to have you on the podcast, because this is a fascinating topic to me, and the fact that they're gone is sad. If we were to go drive to the location of them, what would be there right now?
More than likely, you're going to find just an empty lot.
There's no remnants at all.
To my knowledge, they tore down all the Guidestones and then basically took the remaining pieces and brought them to the Granite Museum. That is where you would probably be able to get to see portions of the Guidestones.
Yeah, and they, I'm looking at a picture here, and they look pretty tall. They look taller than like Stonehenge, and I had never been to the Stonehenge, but I went to a Stonehenge replica, and it was actually the same size, and that's actually in Washington State. And I was actually surprised at how the Stonehenge replica, which is actually said to be the same size, wasn't as big as I had imagined in my head. And looking at this picture, it almost looks like these are maybe taller. Obviously, Stonehenge has a lot more stones. But I'm wondering, I don't know if you know this, is the Georgia Guidestones taller than Stonehenge?
I don't know the exact height of them, but I'm nearly 6 foot and they towered over me.
And I actually happen to have the Wikipedia page open, and it says it was 19 feet 3 inches.
And then I have Stonehenge pulled up, and it says each one's around 13 feet. So yeah.
So how about that? Georgia Guidestones were actually taller than Stonehenge.
Well, you know what they say: the higher the henge, the closer to God.
Yeah, I think that is a saying. It's a good one, for sure. And, I've always been interested in henges in general. Like, there's not enough henges. And why do they, like one's made of stone, or, it doesn't always need to be like made of wood, but I guess the Georgia Guidestones is not a henge per se. It's kind of just like some tablets, square in shape.
Yeah, I said this earlier, it gave me very much the, like, Hammurabi's Code, or what's the Rosetta Stone, very much kind of like that sort of feel to it.
And, we talked about, possible people saying it's linked to Satanism, but is there any proof to this? Like, was there rituals going on? Did people meet up at the Georgia Guidestones? And then it's like also linked to Christianity. And it seems, Satanism and Christianity are kind of antithesis of each other. It seems they can't be both, could they?
I don't know. Like all this, the meetups or the Satanism, all that is hearsay to me. I've never encountered anyone trying to conduct rituals there. The most that I've seen is just the hinges or the granite pillars getting defaced.
Well, I was thinking like, the location of it is very meaningful, right? It's on a hill. But I was just wondering if it like kind of
has a lot of celestial alignments, right? A lot of, if it's lining up with the solstices, the North Star, all that stuff. So clearly there's like that particular location, how it was built, there is like significance to it.
Yeah, and I'm just thinking of like different constellations, or, a star map, or some type of celestial.
If you get into some of the, like, I don't know, pseudo archaeology, if you will, there's this one dude that's been kind of stirring the pot recently, talking about this event called the Younger Dryas. Have you heard of this at all?
I can't say that I have.
Yeah, Gabe, you have a little bit?
Yes, yeah.
So, and then one of the things that he's done is he's gone around, specifically the United States, and gone to these, not necessarily Neolithic, but definitely indigenous earthworks from pre-contact and obviously recorded American history that are potentially recordings of a cataclysmic event some point in history. And they used Like, they use these earthworks to point towards celestial bodies, to kind of take a snapshot of what the night sky kind of looked like, to kind of like pinpoint this time. And so, as we're talking about all of this celestial alignment with a location, we're talking about all of this, like, clearly there's some sort of religious charge to this architecture, right? Satanism, Christianity, kind of two sides of the same coin, but there's something there to that. Did something happen in 1980 that was worth recording in the night sky? I don't know. As we're talking about interconnectivity, time shifts, like, oh god, what parallel worlds, universes, like, is this something coming over? Definitely interesting there, but all the languages are known languages, right? There's no language on there that was mysterious.
Not only that, it seems like it went to invent a new language to unite humanity.
Was that what it's calling for on the stone?
Yeah, so I just have this up now, the inscriptions, and this is very fascinating. So number 1, maintain humanity under 500 million in perpetual balance with nature. We're way over that. Guide reproduction wisely, improve fitness and diversity. Unite humanity with a living new language. Rule passion, faith, tradition, and all things with tempered reason. Protect people and nations with fair laws and just courts. Let all nations rule internally, resolving external disputes in a world court. Avoid petty laws and useless officials. Balance personal rights with social duties. Prize truth, beauty, love, seeking harmony with the infinite. Be not a cancer on earth, leave room for nature, leave room for nature. So a lot of these things are good stuff, interesting stuff, and I would agree with many of them. I mean, the under 500 million seems a little low. I mean, we're way over that. I wonder what the world population was in 1980 when they were resurrected.
Well, here's as you were saying that too, I was sitting here and I was like, man, this sounds like some very like woo-woo, kind of vague, kind of hippie stuff. And it's like, if these were put up in 1980, that means they were made in the 70s. The idea was probably concepted in the 60s, right? Like, is this just somebody's pipe dream? World population in 1970 or 1980 was 4.4 billion. World population in 1960 was 3 billion. Current world population is, and we are currently at 8 billion people. So we are very much exceeding what they described as being balanced. But
which eventually we're going to have to, either have less with a lot of people, there's just going to be too many, and we're going to have to like go to Mars or other planets or something to kind of, keep on, if we're going to keep growing in population. I don't know if we can fit everyone on Earth. I'm not saying that we should, try to lessen people in a murderous sense, but
no, there is an anticipated population collapse though, like worldwide. Like they project, and this is probably extreme, but they say it could go back under like 1 billion people, like that extreme of a collapse. And they're starting to see, like, China is about to face, they're facing a population collapse, potentially due in a large part to like their one child policy that was enacted a generation ago. And yeah, even in America, you're seeing a decline in birth rates, right? Like we're still growing a population due to immigration and stuff, but like the birth rates are declining. So yeah, it's definitely on the forecast to kind of maybe do it, like kind of take care of itself naturally. And then obviously like what you said, there's heavy investment into the idea of terraforming Mars and kind of growing that. I know there's a couple of video games that I want to play that's around that subject.
Yeah, and I mean, could you, COVID happened, if there was another outbreak of something else that, could lessen the population. We got multiple wars going on currently. I mean, to think if we were dragging into another world war to kind of lessen population, let alone just people naturally deciding not to have less children. But I think there's areas in the world where they're having more. So it's definitely an interesting thing to balance out. And I don't really know what the maximum of our planet would be able to safely host, without having to go to another planet and or do something drastically different. We think about maybe we could build more, stack people on top of each other, or maybe underground habitat places. So you could also the water areas, so maybe you could have people living in the oceans in some type of ships or bubbles or kind of things, or floating in space.
They're experimenting right now with that in I want to say like Malaysia for some reason, but somewhere in that archipelago, they are kind of playing with technology of like floating houses to combat rising sea levels. So that's definitely, I think there is definitely a precedent for living kind of on the water, right?
Yeah, and then if they could do like submarine houses and kind of get more people underwater, and you think about the vastness of our ocean, how deep it is, it's just science to kind of, wouldn't it be easier to kind of have houses underwater than to have them on Mars? Because, Mars is kind of worse than Antarctica, which let alone if we could terraform Mars, why couldn't we terraform Antarctica or some other portion of our planet to kind of have these things? And I don't know if the science is there or yet, but possibly in the future we could have some of these things. But, also we talked about the Georgia Guidestones kind of being above water. So if there was a flood and, possibility of climate change kind of creating the sea levels to rise and needing just less land mass area and having certain spaces that are above water to have, livable places, but maybe having houses that are in water, floating on water, underwater. I don't know if feasible to have places to live in the air, but I mean, you could sure probably have large towers that could maybe survive the water underneath and then have them up in the air or something. Could live in the sky, cloud cities on Earth.
I'm thinking of something I say on the tour, kind of talking about, we talk about ghosts or energy. Energy can either be created or destroyed. And the same thing kind of goes with matter. And so there is a finite amount of cells on this planet. And so, we absorb a lot of them, kind of keeping our bodies maintained and growing more people. So yeah, your question, I think, was a good one. At what point, like, what is the comfortable number to be sustainable for humanity? Georgia Guidestones says it's 500 million people, I guess, right?
Yeah, 500 million. I mean, could you imagine if the world had only 500 million people and you're one of them? You would just be much more rare. But I don't know. It's interesting to think about.
I'm looking up. I'm very curious. When was the world population 500 million?
Yeah,
people?
when was it?
1650.
Yeah, make America great again, make the world great again, to go back to 1650. I don't know if people would really enjoy living in 1650. I sure wouldn't. I enjoy our modern times. But, it's like, Marvel Endgame. It's like, could you imagine if it went to 500 million and like, a bunch of people just kind of disappeared off the earth? You would miss your friends, and I think it'd be sad.
Yeah, it was interesting. It was saying the world population is 500 million in 1650, but I guess it had approached that number before. But then when the Black Plague hit, it wiped out 100 million people. So that was like a fifth of the world population. Like 20% of the people in the world died during the Black Plague. Well, that was known, right? Because there was all these people over in the Americas that like nobody had any idea existed. So
yeah, so that was like Marvel Endgame, Avengers Endgame happening back in the 1600s.
Oh my God, yeah, that's wild. That's absolutely wild.
But yeah, I think this is all interesting stuff, and I wish I could go to the Georgia Guidestones, and maybe someday I'll still go to the area, and maybe they'll get rebuilt again. I guess we're kind of getting towards the end of the podcast. Wesley, is there anything that you'd like to talk about in paranormal nature, or anything in particular, or anything that you missed or wanted to touch upon, or anything you want to promote, or anything you're doing or have to say?
I will just say this. If you do ever go to that area with the Georgia Guidestones, make a pit stop by the Granite City Museum inside of Elberton. You'll get a touch of the history. You'll be able to hopefully see some remnants of the Guidestones, but just overall, it's an interesting little place
Nice.
to go.
Anything else in the area to go do? Like if, let's say we're doing a little trip, we're going to stay in the area, we're going to go to the Granite City Museum. What else is there to do tourism-wise in the general vicinity?
Not a whole lot. You're going out into the country, get very used to seeing chicken farms and smelling cows.
Okay. How about a restaurant? Is there a good restaurant to eat at?
There is a little place in Elberton that's called Richard's. It's a little sports bar that you'd probably like.
All right. So we'll go eat at Richard's, check out the Granite City Museum, stop by there, and maybe are you close enough to meet us there if we decide to go? Would you want to go eat at Richard's and buy a meal?
About an hour and a half out. I wouldn't mind.
Okay. Well, we'll put that on our to-do list. Hey, maybe sometime we'll do that. Anything else you have to add, Dustin? What do you think?
Yeah, man, it's got me. A lot of this got me thinking. Thank you so much, Wesley, for coming on to the show. I hope to get down and check out these Guidestones. I'd love to. I want to kind of deep dive into more of like the Mason ideology, philosophy, to see how it lines up. Because clearly there's something here. It's all very interesting. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for talking about the Guidestones and helping us uncover a little more paranormal.
Right. And to the end of the podcast, I'll say the truth is paranormal. And if you could finish by saying be a searcher. So we'll go ahead and do that. The truth is paranormal.
Be a searcher.
Be a searcher, y'all. That's it. That's all we got for today's episode. Thank you for joining us. Please like and subscribe. And don't forget to follow us on social media at Truth Searchers. See you next time.